Hey everyone, it's me, Coral. Welcome back to my channel. Today I'm talking about the books that I read in August. So I did not get to all the things that I planned to this month, but that's okay because I think I over-planned. So I did get enough done to finish what I wanted to do for the Newt's readathon, so that's good. Then I also got a couple extras in, I think. We'll see. Okay, so as far as like the stats for this month go, I ended up finishing 9 books, which was 2,698 pages, and that is 93 pages a day. As far as the years that these books were published, I had 1 book from 1990, 1 book from 1999, 1 book from 2013, 2 books from 2016, a book from 2017, 2 from 2018, and a new release from 2019. There were 7 adult novels, 2 young adult novels, and then altogether there was 1 novella, 1 graphic novel, 1 short story collection, and then 6 like full-length novels. 5 of them were horror, 1 was fantasy, 1 was like historical fiction or maybe like alternate history, and then 1, I don't know, 1 was by someone who writes horror, but I think this book was more like magical realism more than, you know, anything actually very spooky. As far as star ratings go, I had 1 1-star, 1 2-star, 1 3-star, 1 4.5-star, and 5 5-stars, which is pretty crazy. But, you know, having those like lower rated books kind of made it was hard to get through some of them this month. On average, my rating would be 3.9 across the board. So that's that. Okay, so let's see. For the books that I read for the magical readathon, the first one was The Gil Goal by Henry W. Hocherman. This is a 1-star book for me. It was just so not good. I'm planning on doing just kind of a casual series on books featured in Paperbacks from Howl and doing like a review and a summary separately on whenever I pick one of those up. So I'm not going to tell you really what this is about because I've already filmed a full review on it that I will be posting whenever it gets edited. So this was 1 star. It was not good. It was weird and just kind of boring. So this was 1 star. I really would have ended up DNFing it if I didn't want to finish it so that I could give it a real review. So I struggled through it. It took me like almost 2 weeks to read this, which is ridiculous, and I didn't like it at all. Okay, next I read the first volume of Gideon Falls by Jeff Lemire, Andrea Sorrentino, and Dave Stewart. I'm not sure who is the writer and who's are the illustrators, but this was really interesting. I ended up giving it 4.5 stars. It was really, really good, but it's not something that I could be like, oh yeah, this is my favorite, you know what I mean? There's a couple different characters that we're following in this. One is a man named Norton, and you can tell he maybe has some obsessive compulsive behaviors. He has been like digging through trash to find things that he's trying to like rebuild something, but he's not really sure what. He just knows that he's drawn to these pieces of trash for some reason. Another character that we follow is a priest who has been relocated to a new church. Is he a priest or just a pastor? I think he might be a priest. I'm not sure. I don't think that really matters that much, but he's relocated to a new church, and the town that he's in, it's like a really small town, and they just lost their previous priest. I want to say priest. I think he might be a priest. all these characters are connected because they've been seeing visions of this big, huge black barn. And I think that's all I can tell you without, you know, telling you too much. But I really, really like this, and I'm excited to see where this goes from here. There was some really good, creepy artwork in this. Next I have And I Darken by Kiersten White. This one I listened to the audiobook and read some of it. This was a reread for me, and it was 5 stars again. This is really such a great story. If you like historical fiction, like, I cannot recommend this enough. I don't think I'm usually a very big historical fiction fan, but like, if all historical fiction was written like this, I would be. This is like an alternate history retelling, like gender swap of Vlad the Impaler. But Vlad in this story is not a man. She's a woman, and her name is Ladislav Dracul. She's the daughter of Vlad Dracula. The story is about her and her little brother Radu and them growing up in Wallachia and getting, you know, there's like a lot of political stuff. So like they end up being raised partly in the Ottoman Empire, kind of like, you know, as like a, to like make sure that their father follows the rules kind of a thing, as like a vassal state. And I don't know, I there's just so much in here to give like a good concise summary. So like that's it. Like, it's just them growing up and making connections and trying to assimilate, or trying really hard not to assimilate to this country that they're not really sure if they love or if they want to be in. You know, there's like a sense of feeling like, if, at least for Lada, that if she assimilates and like accepts that this is where she lives, that she'll be like losing a piece of herself and stuff like that. And it's really good. It's so it's so well written. You can just tell that like the author really cares about these characters, and I can't wait to get to the second book finally. I'm so glad that I reread this. Okay, next I have Something Borrowed, Something Blood-Soaked by Christa Carmen. This was part of the Bloody Beach readathon, the Bloody Beach read-along for August. And there was another book, it was Kill River 2, that was also part of the read-along, but I just didn't get to it this month. But I did read Something Borrowed, Something Blood-Soaked, and this was so good. It's a horror short story collection. So like, I can't really give you a summary, but it deals a lot with like people with addiction, and I don't know, there's like a lot of relationships in here, and oh man, these were really good. It reminded me somewhat of Christy DeMeester's collection, Everything That's Underneath. Like, it gets a little bit into maybe like literary horror, where it's like the story, I don't know, I don't want to say like it doesn't make sense, but it's like you don't get all the pieces of the puzzle. You just kind of have to think about it and like assume some things, which I like more than I thought I would. But there's just a couple stories in here like that. You know, there are others that are like real short punches to the gut, and there's some good creepy stuff in here, and this was just like really well written. I think the best one in here was Lady of the Flies, which is like, I'm pretty sure that this cover is a depiction of that story. And it was just so, I don't know, Christa Carmen has that thing where she can write really well, in-depth characters in such a short amount of time. And it's like, I know these characters, even though I've only been with them for, you know, 20 pages. So it was a pretty incredible collection, and I would definitely recommend it. Next, I read A House at the Bottom of a Lake by Josh Malerman. This is the book I was talking about. That's like, it has to be more magical realism than anything else. And this was a 5-star read for me as well. It was really, really good. And it's not often that I like sit down and can pay attention to a book for long enough to like read it in one sitting. But this was just like so absorbing and eerie, and like, you know, something's not quite right, but you don't want to find out like what isn't quite right, because like it's good right now and like you just want it to keep being good. And oh my gosh, this is a story of 2 teenagers. They go out on their first date and go out canoeing or kayaking. I'm not sure what was it. Canoeing. Okay, so they go out canoeing for the first date, and they find this like hidden lake that's connected to a lake that one of the main characters, James, like has been on numerous times, and he's like never heard anyone talk about it. He's never seen it himself, but they find their way to this like weird hidden lake, and they see this house under the water and decide to go explore it. And it like becomes kind of an obsession, and they just like can't keep themselves away from it. And the whole time it's like you feel a little bit of dread, because you know that there's like no reason that a house would be at the bottom of a lake. Yeah, I don't know. It was really good though. It was just like, I just couldn't put it down, really. And the ending, it had an ambiguous ending, which I think that some people must not like, but I really liked it because it lets you kind of imagine what you want to imagine, you know? Like ambiguous endings, you could make your own ending up. Like they're the perfect endings because it could be whatever you want it to be. So this one was good. I didn't mean to put all my 5-star reads together, but I accidentally did. This is Wilder Girls by Rory Power. This was a 5-star read for me as well. This was a young adult horror book, and I have to say, like, if anyone doubts whether or not YA horror can pack a punch, like, you are wrong, because this book was absolutely freaking bananas. It was so, it had like Lost vibes. It was gruesome. Okay, but it's about this boarding school for girls on an island, and they've been quarantined there for going on like years at this point, and they're just like kind of waiting out a cure. And they call this thing that they have the tox, and it's infected the girls there. It's infected like the teachers there. It's infected the wildlife there, and like the land itself. Like things have quickly become like overgrown and bigger than they should be, and like the animals are bigger than they should be. And the way that the tox works, well, like no one actually knows how the tox works. It's like people, the girls get these flare-ups of it, and it does different things to their bodies. Like the main character, she talks about like her eye just like went dead and her eyelid like fused shut, but she can feel something underneath her eyelid like growing and like moving. And there's a girl who has grown like gills. There's a girl who's like spine, it's like she has a second spine that like rips out of her back. It's gnarly. It is so gnarly. And there's like, I don't know, it's crazy. And so these girls are just kind of like trying to wait out the quarantine, and suddenly one of the main character, it's like a trio, the main character and 2 of her friends, and one of the girls goes missing. So, you know, they want to find out where she went because the teachers are hiding something from them. but they're not really sure what. And it's pretty nuts. It's a really great book. It gave me Lost vibes, like I said, you know, the show Lost. It was really intense, and it was one that I think also, if I didn't have, you know, if I could just sit down and read a whole book this length, like A House at the End, A House at the Bottom of the Lake was short. It was only, you know, barely 100 pages, so like it was feasible that I could sit down and read it. This was, you know, 350 pages, so there's just no way I could sit down and read it all at once, but I read it very quickly. I wanted to get back to it. And man, this cover is beautiful, and unlike the Gil Goal, the content matches the beauty of the cover, luckily. It was very, very good, and I would definitely recommend that you pick this up soon. So this is Gardens of the Moon by Steven Erikson. I started this, I think, in April, and this covers the last challenge that I had for the Newts readathon. It was read a book with birds on the cover, and I had planned on reading Blackbirds by Chuck Wendig, but I didn't get through it all. So like, this does have tiny little baby birds on the cover, so I'm counting that as that book with birds on the cover, so that I just like barely finished my Newts. So this is a fantasy book, and like, I can't even tell you what it's about. I have no fucking idea. Like, it felt like the whole time I was reading it that everyone was keeping secrets from me. They all had like ulterior motives that weren't clear at all, but like, you know that like they're not really working for who they say they're working for, but like, I don't know what happened in this book. I can't even tell you. It was like, there was some warfare and like political stuff and like backstabbing and like, I don't know, people exploding themselves and weird magic, and it was just like really inaccessible, I think. There were parts of this that I liked, and it was like, the story is interesting, but I'd have to like read paragraphs over like a couple times to understand what was going on. And like, I even listened to some of it on audiobook, and I would have to repeat that, which like, I don't really ever, I can't think of a time where I've had to do that, except for like, maybe I was concentrating on something and lost a couple seconds. But like, this was me concentrating, still don't know what the fuck's going on. I have to rewind it because I don't know what's going on, and like, I still don't know what's going on. And I don't know. This ended up being a 2-star read for me. There's like no way I'm continuing on with this series. It was too messy, too many characters with like not enough explanation. The world building was poor, I think. He just like throws you in here and expects you to know what's going on, and it's like, I don't know. I don't fucking know any of this. It isn't like Earth. They aren't on the Earth, you know? So you shouldn't just expect people to understand what's happening. I really would not ever recommend this for somebody who's just getting into fantasy either, because like I said, it's totally inaccessible, and nothing's ever very well explained in this book. And if you liked it, I'm super, super glad for you. I just like really didn't think it was very good. So that's it. I tried it, I hated it. I'm done with it. Forever. Take my bookmarks out of here because they don't need to be in here anymore. The end. All right, let's see. Another book I read. I'm not going to give you a full synopsis on this either because I talked about it full length in a trope video this month. So, yeah. You can find a full summary of that in there. But this is Last Days by Adam Nevill. Basically, this was about a documentarian who's hired to do a documentary on a now disbanded cult called The Last Days, and things get spooky. He thinks that the guy who hired him might have ulterior motives, and there's like some weird like creepy, I don't know, some weird, it's kind of like magic only, not really like magic. I don't know. It was, parts of this were very good, but a lot of it was just like really slow, and it was really long. It was a long book. I ended up giving this 3 stars. I thought it was okay. Like altogether, it was just okay. The idea was so interesting that I think maybe that was the fact that the idea of it was so interesting, but then the execution was kind of wobbly, kind of maybe gave it a lower rating for me than if I hadn't thought that the idea was so interesting. So that's that. Okay, last but not least, I have finally finished reading Paperbacks from Hell by Grady Hendrix. This is a nonfiction look at some of the history of horror in the 70s and 80s, getting into the very early 90s. And man, this is just such a great book, and I don't read nonfiction all that often. And honestly, like when this came out, I kind of poo-pooed it for a while because I was like, it's a book about books. But then I got it. I was looking at it in Barnes & Noble and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna pick this up. And like immediately it just grabs you, because this is a book about books, but it's a book about books written by Grady Hendrix, who is witty and charming, and just, you can tell that he has a lot of love for the things that he writes about, which is just nice to read. And there's so many cool, like they have scans of all these books in here. It's so fun to just look at even. I know a lot of the books came from Will Erikson. Luckily he's around so that we can all look at his awesome collection of books. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to explain here. He goes through the history. It's like divided up into kind of different subject matters. So it's just fun. It's fun. It took me a long time to read because I kind of wanted to like savor it, I guess. And I did. It took me a while to read this. But this was a 5-star read. If you love weird old books, if you love just looking at weird artwork or, you know, reading about books, I guess this might be good for you. Yeah, that's it. That's what I read this month. Oh, I also got partially into Blackbirds by Chuck Wendig, which I'm liking. Hopefully I'll finish that in September. Well, that's all I have for you today. My dog is barking outside. I'm sure you can hear him. He just can't stop. Anyways, thank you so much for watching, everybody. Leave me a comment down below if you've read any of these, if you plan on reading any of them. I don't know what you plan to do with your life, but if your life involves any of these books, let me know, because I'd love to talk to you about them. Yeah, that's all I have for you though. Thank you so much for watching, you guys. I will see you, I don't know, like maybe tomorrow or the day after with my TBR for September. So keep your peepers peeled for that. Okay, bye.